There was kind of this split screen moment on the television stations where you have them celebrating the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act next to the Dow going down by, I think, close to 1,300 points. So it's kind of a bad PR moment for them, to say the least.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Sarah Westwood, and I'm here today with White House reporter Hasten Willis. Hasten, this past week, President Biden held what ended up being sort of a disastrous event at the White House celebrating his efforts to reduce inflation the same day that the CPI came out and showed that inflation was at 8.3%. Biden and the Democrats, they seem to want to have the conversation for the midterms be more about abortion, but with these numbers and with the sort of bungling of the economic message, is that going to be possible for Democrats?
Right, this is really interesting. The timing was interesting for one, but they passed a bill, of course, called the Inflation Reduction Act several weeks ago now. They had a bill signing a few weeks later, but before now, and they had a second event earlier this week to celebrate the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. They happened to hold it for some reason on the same day that the CPI numbers came out. The numbers were high, and those numbers were also met with a stock market sell-off. The event was held in the afternoon, and there was kind of this split screen moment on the television stations where you have them celebrating the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act next to the Dow going down by, I think, close to 1,300 points. So it's kind of a bad PR moment for them, to say the least. And right, they want the election to be about other things. They want it to be about abortion, as you said, about Trump. They don't want it to be about high inflation and grocery prices and things like that. But unfortunately, that's what they're going to be staring down, because the numbers did come out and they were very high. Inflation was very high.
The migrant busing efforts from Republican governors continued this week with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis sending buses of migrants up to Martha's Vineyard, and then this sort of high-profile arrival of migrants in front of Vice President Kamala Harris's home. And this is coming after Harris received some criticism for saying in an interview this past week that the border is secure, when that's just clearly not the case. I mean, as this effort continues and it sort of highlights the disconnect between the administration's rhetoric and reality, do you think that the Biden White House is going to start facing criticism outside of conservative circles for the immigration crisis?
That's a very good question. Yeah, this story just seems to get bigger and bigger every week. As you said, Vice President Kamala Harris said a few days ago that the border is secure, that it looks good, and so Texas Governor Greg Abbott responded to that by he'd been sending buses to D.C. for months now, but he sent a few buses that were dropped off right in her literal front yard, right in front of the Vice President's residence. It's secure, and yet here are these migrants in your front yard. So the White House doesn't seem to be responding to pressure from this so far. D.C., the city of D.C. has requested the National Guard twice. The federal government said no to that, but I think they've made kind of similar responses to the mayor of New York and Chicago. They haven't really stepped in. So obviously this is something that's gaining a lot of traction, getting a lot of attention, but the White House has not buckled so far.
And finally, you wrote a piece about this in the Washington Examiner this week, but Biden has sort of been lurching from topic to topic, right? He's talking about abortion, he's talking about the economy, demonizing Republicans. Is this a White House that is still, in your eyes, in search of a closing argument for the midterms? And what does that say about where Democrats are right now?
Yeah, they have kind of a good news, bad news situation. The good news for them is that they passed a lot of bills and got a lot of legislation done. Biden also did some executive orders over the last few months. The bad news is that leaves them with a lot of different things they can talk about. Do you talk about the student loans bailout? Do you talk about the Inflation Reduction Act? Do you talk about some of the other bills that they passed? So there's a little bit of kind of mixed messaging. What are we going to focus on, right? I think the biggest thing that Biden would like to focus on is probably Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. He wants that contrast. Even if maybe you don't love what we're doing as Democrats, look what the alternative is. It's Trump and his scary style and that kind of thing. But unfortunately for them, I think the economy is starting to come back to the forefront again with inflation numbers being high. Biden really wants to focus on winning the Midwest. He visits the Midwest quite a bit. He goes to Wisconsin. He was in Michigan earlier this week. He's been to Pennsylvania 3 times in the last month. He wants to focus on that, and he wants to win suburban voters. So I think he wants to focus on the Trump message and the MAGA Republicans. Unfortunately for him, the economy is probably going to be more top of mind for voters this fall.
Well, Hasten, thanks so much for being here today. You can get more reporting from Hasten and the rest of the White House team at WashingtonExaminer.com.